everyone. I'm Sushant, and I'm really glad to introduce you to a new topic with a very esteemed speaker today. So, our topic is a little different today. It is spirituality and medical science. And our speaker today is a very esteemed rheumatologist, Dr. C. Balakrishnan, sir. And as an introduction, I would like to request sir to please introduce himself.
Thank you, Sushant. Thank you for inviting me. I know that you're doing yeoman service in this field. I'd like to tell everyone that I am a MD in internal medicine from Pune. After that, I was interested in rheumatology. So since 1992, I've been in the field of rheumatology. Most of the training was in Hinduja and part of it was in the UK. And I'm back now as a rheumatologist. My interest in spirituality came about 10-12 years ago when I thought that although I was doing the right things being a physician and a rheumatologist, I always thought that there was something more to life than just this, and that led me to the quest in spirituality. I'm not a guru. I don't have any sishyas. I don't have any disciples. I'm also on the path of this quest as many people are, and I'm only happy to share a few things with you since you're asking me questions. Thank you.
So let me start by asking you one very basic question. As a doctor, you are a man of science, and spirituality very often it is thought doesn't really go hand in hand. So what are your views between how does spirituality and science go together? Is it compatible? Are they antagonists? How should we think of it?
They're absolutely compatible. I don't think there's anything incompatible between spirituality and science. As students of science, we only know the great scientific discoverers who have contributed to the field of medicine. And we also know many scientists. And if you go into their lives, you'll be stunned to see how much spiritual they were. This includes people like Albert Einstein. This includes people like Tesla of the electricity fame. It includes Edison. So many of these people were very, very spiritual at their core, even though they were great scientists. And it will be very surprising to read how they came about with these scientific discoveries. And many of them would tell you that it was a moment of silence when everything else, when the world had resided, and suddenly something struck them from somewhere and they brought this idea out. It was this eureka moment, as they say, and they came out with the scientific discovery and they were not able to explain it after that. So these are moments of truth that come out from the universe into these people who are searching for them relentlessly. And these were, many of them were at the core very, very spiritual souls. So I don't think there is any disparity or discord between science and spirituality. In a way, I would say that a scientific search of what or who you are is spirituality. So it's very scientific at the core. If you have a teacher called a guru, it is good. If you don't have a teacher, but you have a very inquiring mind, that itself is very good. Because eventually the external guru, if you do have a guru or a teacher, only points you to the internal guru who is within you. And that's what the external guru is for. So there is nothing sacrosanct about having a guru, but if you don't have one, even if you have a very inquiring mind, that is enough, that will take you in. Science is something when the mind goes outwards, evolution, going outwards again and again, trying to find out new things outside. Spirituality is inwards, if you go inwards. So I have coined a term involution for that. So it's not evolution, it's involution. As much as you go outwards, you can go inwards and search, and you'll find many things which are very, very essential. So I think there is no discord between the two.
Very interesting term. I really couldn't understand it completely. You said that at the core of their discoveries, these great scientists had moments of silence. What do you really mean by that? Could you elaborate for us?
See, the mind is full of thoughts. Mind is nothing but a collection of thoughts. And the minute we are awake, the mind is awake. Many times, you will also find that in moments of silence, when you are confronted with a very difficult case, very difficult patient, and you're not getting an answer, sometimes in the silence, you suddenly get an answer as to what it could be. And suddenly you start going behind that, and that happens. Or you call what we call as a second opinion. We call somebody from outside to have a look at that case, and that person goes through it with very calm mind. He's not totally involved with that case, but he's been given that, and he comes up with some suggestions which might be very, very important to you. So many times the answer comes when you're searching for something very, very incessantly, day in and day out, when you're in silence. And in that silence, the universe sort of gives the answer to you. And these are moments which all these great scientists have found. And I think it's very important to realize that in the muddle of all the thoughts, when suddenly when there is silence, there is an answer that comes. Many people wake up with an answer. They go off to sleep with all these questions in their mind, and they are woken up with an answer. So in sleep, there are no thoughts. The whole thing is silent. And sometimes the answer comes through that, and it's very important to recognize that.
Right, sir. So you also said that the mind is at all points we are thinking. I can say that as a practicing doctor today, and as a student yesterday, and even a student today, of course, and all the students who are listening to this, there are so many thoughts that are happening in our mind together. How do we start on this path then? How do we start this inward journey? Where is the start point?
This can't be done initially when you're working. I think it's a process. Like anything, there has to be some amount of working on it, doing things. It's like any medical science wherein if you have to do auscultation, the more you auscultate, the better you get. So one of the things that is very important to realize is that although we have 10 thoughts at a time and we think we are multitasking, it's only one thought at a time that can enter the mind, and one after the other comes in succession and makes us feel that we are thinking 10 things at the same time, but it's one thought at a time. So one of the things to do is to concentrate on one thought and leave all the other thoughts out and keep concentrating only on that. And that, in a way, is the start of meditation. You can call it anything, you can give names to it. Our sages have spoken about keeping one name, one God in mind, one object in mind. It could be anything. The whole idea is to make the mind think of only one thing and try and exclude all the others so that it quietens down. And that's something, that's a very simplistic way of saying what meditation is. If you've heard all our great saints, they would, at least in Maharashtra, they would say Namasmarana. Think of one God and keep repeating it, chanting, as the Westerners would call it. So like Om Namah Shivaya is a chant, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. These are all trying to keep one thought in mind and trying to exclude all the other thoughts so that the mind calms down. And then that's the time that you get a lot of peace and the whole body regenerates. Why do you think we wake up feeling very regenerated after sleep? That's because there are no thoughts there. The whole mind is blank. And that's when, and all of us love to go to sleep because of that, because we want these thoughts to quieten down, the mind to quieten down, so that we can confront another day the next day. So meditation is nothing but sleep while you're awake. So that's a very simple way of putting it. So if you can do that, that's something. Initially, it starts off at half an hour, 1 hour when when you have free time, but over a period of time, it starts occurring day in and day out. And there are two ways of doing it when you're working, and it takes time to inculcate. One is called as mindfulness. If you can watch every thought and action that you do, then you become a third person. And even though you're doing those actions and thinking those thoughts, you're aware of it all the time. And that quietens you down. You're doing everything that you need to do, probably a little better and faster without even realizing it, without getting tired. And you're able to do more and more. And in this situation, what is happening around us today, the COVID times, I think this is a very important thing to do. You have to be very, very comfortable and careful. And you have to be calm inside. And these things, this is one which is called as mindfulness. The other is, we have already spoken, chanting and namasmaran. So that's also it.
So what you described just now reminds me of that time when I was preparing for exams. To be very honest, the closest I reached to concentrating on one thing so dedicatedly is when I was preparing for exams. That was the ultimate focus. I remember as maybe a postgraduate entrance or any other big exam that came to me. I was very focused on that. Is this similar? Is my work something which could be the source of my spirituality?
Yes, I mean, there are many ways. I mean, in putting things in a very, very, let's say, basic way, is to say that when you cleanse the mind with any action, the mind becomes transparent and you become an instrument of a higher power. You call it God, you call it Guru, whatever you have it. So cleaning the mind is something that we need to do, and what method we use for it differs from person to person. For one person, it could be a puja. For the
Hmm.
other, it could be meditation. For the third, it could be chanting. And what you said, for the fourth, it could be selfless service. Now, selfless service is another way of purifying your mind so that you become an instrument of a higher power, whatever you want to call it. But it has to be selfless. When you're treating patients, if you do it with an attitude of service, which often is not there, then what happens is you become an instrument of a higher power.
Hmm.
And that selfless service will come only if you have two important additional qualifications when you're treating patients, seeing patients. One is empathy, and other is compassion. If you have these two things with every patient who comes in front of you, you will not go wrong 99.99% of the times, and you will not go wrong, and the patient will realize it. You will realize it. I keep telling my students that yes, you're a very good rheumatologist, very good internal medicine person, you're treating them well, but when you're doing this with compassion, when you're doing this with empathy, when you're doing this without really feeling a selfless service, if you're doing it, you're doing something beyond just being a medical person. One of your important questions was, what is the difference between a healer and a doctor?
Yes,
A
sir.
doctor treats a patient, a healer goes beyond with these three attributes that I said: empathy, compassion, and selfless treatment. When you do that, you become a healer because you're doing things beyond just, the time doesn't matter. It might be just the 10, 15 minutes of consult that you have with the patient. But if you can do this with this feeling in your heart, you're doing a little bit more. And the patients will realize it immediately, because the next time you go to them, there'll be a broad smile on the face when they see, because they also felt it, that there was something more to this gentleman, this person, this doctor, than just seeing me as a machine, just trying to find out what's wrong with me. That
Okay.
he's trained to do, but he has done something more than that. I think that's important.
As I get from what you're saying, sir, it seems that there are more than one way for us to start on this path of spirituality. Again, it might seem like the same question in a different way, but I would really like to know: do you feel there is one path which is better than other? So, if I am in a hurry, should I be starting with something else, or something one out of them, or is everything eventually leading to the same?
There is no one path which is better than the other, but what is very important is that what path might be right for you may not be right for me, and that you will know very, very soon. For example, meditation might come very easily to some people. There is something called as jnana marga, where they think about, who am I, where was I in the period of deep sleep, where was I? So these sort of questionnaires come to a certain sect of people, and there are some. The easiest, the simplest way is to do selfless service. That there is nothing simpler than that. That is the closest to our profession. We are already there. I mean, as doctors, I can't think of any other speciality or a job where you sit at one place and 30, 40 people come to you for their problems, and you are in a position to help them, and the Almighty has given you the strength to help them. I don't think there are very many other specialities like this. Once you realize that, the patient should not be thankful, you should be thankful that you're at a place to help them. And I think that should be enough. If once you realize that, that is, you start doing things automatically in the right direction. You don't need a guru. You in fact, if you start all this, you will find your own guru. The guru will come in front of you, because the way you're doing things, you will find somebody who will motivate you. For example, if you're in this path, suddenly, I'm not saying, I mean, you might come across somebody like somebody like a Tata, someone who is doing the same things, who is in the community without, with little fanfare, doing it quietly.
Hmm.
So Mother Teresa. So you would come across somebody like Mother Teresa. These might be your gurus. So you will find them, or they will find you, if you're on the right path.
So, a lot of people who are listening to this interview or would be listening to this interview would be medical students.
Right.
As I see my own journey in the last few years, I remember that these questions first hit me in a big way when my residency began in AIMS. And I realized I was seeing a lot of death beyond what my theoretical knowledge had prepared me for. As a resident in AIMS, I saw in the first few years it was astonishing for me really that there is so much death and so much suffering. Uh, what are your thoughts on this question of life and death? And as a person of science versus a person of spirituality, is there a conflict in the idea of death, or does it again? I'll ask the same first question: does it go hand in hand?
Um, I think in medicine at the moment, we are looking at the physiological, anatomical, and biochemical changes of life and death, and that's what we're looking at. But a human being is much more than just this. A human being has a mind, a human being has something called consciousness, which we are aware of, which probably other beings are not aware of, animals, for example. Consciousness is something that we need to be aware of very, very importantly. And how do I explain what it is? It's a very difficult thing to explain, but I would say that when you wake up in the morning from deep sleep, the stirrings of getting awake, you know that you're awake. Just about that time, you know that you're an entity. You know that you're a person in this world.
Hmm.
That feeling, that switch that comes on when you wake up from sleep is called consciousness. And that is there throughout until you go to sleep again. Now, that is something which people have looked into, but not in as much detail as they have looked at the human body. They've gone into the microscopic aspects of human body, but people have not taught, or we as medical students are not taught much about consciousness, which is also as important as the body, because without consciousness there is no body. In deep sleep you didn't have a body. When you're knocked off by an anesthetic agent, you don't know where you are, you don't have a body. So body is something that comes and goes, but that consciousness remains. How do I know that consciousness remains? I know that I was asleep, I know that I'm awake. So that knowing of both the sleep part and the awake part is the consciousness.
Hmm.
So that is something that we are not talked about, or we don't look at. And fortunately, our great sages have looked at it in great detail, but somehow we don't think that it's scientific to listen to them, or it's scientific to read what they have said. But once you read them, you realize how scientific they have been.
Hmm.
They're also telling you not to accept anything without you going through it. So
Hmm.
you just have to read one of these books that these great sages have written, and you'll realize that they're also talking in a very scientific manner about these things. It's
Right.
just that we have a mental block against all this and we don't want to read it. But the time will come when you will. You will be shaken out of your roots once in a while, and you will, like you were in
Hmm.
AIMS. So sometimes what happens is something catastrophic happens for you to shake yourself out of this usual thing that you're doing and suddenly think, what is happening? Why is it happening to me? Who am I? These questions come only sometimes when there is a shake up in life, like losing a near and dear one, or seeing somebody near having a dreadful time. So these things. So there was a great Turkish poet, saint called Rumi, who said that light enters through a wound. So once there is a wound, then you start thinking, contemplating, sitting. This is a good time when many of us are quarantined or sitting inside to think about these things, but somehow we don't. We try to find out other ways to keep ourselves occupied. But that's fine. But once in a while, these things also happen.
So, I would like to have your thoughts on this one question. As people who go through our normal lives, we have so many responsibilities, we have so much work, we have set our targets in life that I want to achieve this at this point, and hopefully I'll become this, or we have ambitions, we have thoughts. In all of this, is there a higher purpose to life that I am missing out on? How will I know that? Is there first of all a higher purpose to life, and if at all, where should I find it, and how is that compatible with what I'm doing right now?
Your own heart will tell you whether you're doing the right things now or not. I'll only take your example. You are a well trained internal medicine person. but you also started doing many social things and doing things a little differently, and you're finding your niche there, and you're finding you belong there, isn't it? Your heart will tell you whether you're doing the right things or not. So if you're doing something which you don't like, you will never do it as well. You will never do it with the same intensity that you will do something that you really like. Supposing I'm a born singer and I've become a doctor. Yes, I'll still be treating patients, but I'll be doing it very mechanically. But in that bathroom, when I start singing, I know that I'm connecting with something which is beyond what I'm doing as a medical person. So your heart will tell you exactly where you are and will guide you all the time. It's just that we listen to the mind and not to the heart. If you start listening to your heart, you will know that it will take you to the right places. Whether you like it or not, you will always be going towards the right places. If you ask me what are the purposes of a human being, I think it is a little higher than what we do in day-to-day life. It's my personal thing that
Yes.
the purpose is to help others. If you look at nature, nature gives you the answer to this question beautifully. Nature keeps doing without expecting anything in return. The rains fall, giving water without expecting anything in return. The wind blows, taking seeds to pollen, germinate and take the pollens away without expecting anything in return. A bird, a beautiful bird sitting somewhere and has a beautiful voice, sings without expecting anything in return. So doing things for others. A tree gives you shade, whether you're a king or a robber, without expecting anything in return. So doing things, selfless service is the main purpose of a human being. That you will learn it in your own different. That's one. Spiritually, if you ask me what is the purpose is realization. And that is the only purpose. And if not in this life, you will go towards it one way or the other. It's like a hand in a clock. Spirituality is like that. The first second that you move towards it, it has to go through the whole cycle. But moving to that first second doesn't happen in many people on its own. If it happened on its own, you're very blessed. It happens after a rude shock, like I said. And if that also is there, that's also fine. That first step has been taken. You at least start thinking that first second of that hand has moved, and it will move throughout. It will take you towards it. It is inevitable in a way.
Right. So one question, which is, I think it bothers a lot of us. We have some answers, but there's also a little confusion here. Uh, Spirituality and science is one question, but spirituality and religion, how am I to understand that? So a lot of us are brought up thinking, I wouldn't say for everyone, but a lot of us believe at some point in our age that, maybe religion isn't really what I'm looking at for. Science is the answer, not religion. It's ingrained in the kind of schooling that happens. So
Spirituality and
spirituality and religion, how are they to be understood?
Yeah, spirituality and religion are poles apart. Spirituality is very personal. Religion is for the whole community. In my own thinking, spirituality unites, religion divides. So I think that if you have a scientific bent of mind, and I have told you what spirituality is nothing but you trying to become the best person you are. So there's nothing wrong with that. And whatever makes you the best person you are, go ahead and do that. If
Right.
you're doing something that does not make you the best person you are, your heart will tell you. You cannot lie to your heart. Your conscience or the heart which is inside will tell you immediately that what you're doing. If you call up 1,000 people and proclaim that you're a guru and you're not inside, you will not be able to sleep at night properly. So your heart will clearly tell you that you're not doing the right thing. So spirituality is very personal. It is very individual. It is for your own good and to take you towards your own best self which is inside you, and that best self which is inside you is God. So if you go towards God on your own, nothing stops you from doing that, and you're already doing it. Religion, on the other hand, tells you that you have to behave like this, you have to wear this, you have to cut your hair like this, you have to wear only this, and that sort of differentiates you from the others, which is not what spirituality is. In fact, if you look at all the great saints who started these religions, they never asked you to do all this. Guru Nanak, if you read his teachings, they're also beautifully never asked you to, do this, do that. It all came later on. Even the great saints of India, if you look at them, they're so open. There is nothing restraining about them at all, and they didn't differentiate between human beings. Why? They didn't differentiate between human beings and animals. They gave them the same respect. So they didn't really start doing any of these. These all are mind-made things which came later, man-made things which came later, to isolate rather than to say that I am the best religion. That is mind coming. The great sages never said I am the best. Great sages said this is what it is. You have a look at it. They never said this is the best. I am the guru. They never said. None of these sages said they were gurus actually.
Right.
The others who really realized that that was a great being who was talking. So it's like nature again. Nature just gives. And it is up to you to take, leave, whatever. Nature doesn't say take only this, don't take this, don't take that. Nothing of the sort. So spirituality is individual and religion is a group. And so that's what I think.
Right. So I think it's really enlightening to listen to you and your thoughts on this. To be very honest, it's not easy in today's world to openly have discussions on spirituality. Really, at least in kind of place that we stay in now. But I'm so glad that there are so many things you have shared with us. I have one last question, sir. Again, as you know, there are medical students listening to this. What would be your advice to them?
Put your heart and soul into whatever you're doing, and do it with full earnestness. But always remember, if you get a moment's time to contemplate as to who you are, what you're doing, and what that person in front of you meant to you, do things with heart. The mind is always there. You're always well trained with the mind, but do it with a heart. Always have that just a few seconds more with that patient to calm him and give him solace, comfort, empathize with him. Have compassion for that human being, so that when you do all this, you will never go wrong. And in fact, whatever scientific strength that you have will only get amplified. I've seen many of my professors who have been doing this, and I've seen it with my eyes, that they've all only amplified. They've given, and they've given with such intensity that they're still giving. There's so many of them around you. Look at them, make one of them your goal, and you will never go wrong.
So thank you so much for sparing your valuable time and so much of knowledge that you have shared with us. I'm sure it is going to help a lot of our listeners in their journey now and beyond. Thank you so much.
I think I should thank you, and I should thank whoever is listening to this. I'm happy to take questions later on, maybe in the form if you feel that some students have come up with questions. Questions also help me in my path, so I would love to have questions like this, because and when I'm answering, the answers will also be refined by the questions that are asked. So thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir.